Okay, so as I said, we'll talk about the DevOps, how DevOps can replace the traditional SDLC or software delivery lifecycle, and why DevOps is needed in today's world. Here is the agenda. Before we talk about the agenda, quick intro about myself. So my name is Sanjay. I have been working on DevOps for last many years, close to 19 years now. And although DevOps is a new terminology, but I started working way back in '96 as Unix system administrator, and then slowly got transitioned into more into DevOps role. So that's about me. Now here is the agenda for today. We will understand why DevOps is needed, why DevOps is really rising and being adopted in a lot of product companies. So DevOps, why DevOps is rising in demand, why everyone is moving towards DevOps. We will talk about that part as well. We will also understand, what is DevOps, how it is useful in today's world. We will also talk about the career opportunities that you have with the DevOps. With rising demand, what kind of knowledge that is needed, what kind of skill set is needed, to enter into, say, DevOps. Understand how companies are using DevOps today, what are the type of companies which are moving towards DevOps, and how it is benefiting them, right? So that's the agenda that we are going to talk about today. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So why DevOps? So this is the organization's need today. What is the need? That especially product-based companies, they want the quality of the product to go up, to have better quality. The requirement or the need for today's world is we need to have better speed. That means we are talking about the performance of the application. So when you have applications which are online, it is expected that the performance of your application is really good. So that means we are talking about speed. We talk about efficiency, that your application should be efficient enough. And efficiency, not just the application, but every efficiency that we talk about. We talk about the cost efficiency. We talk about the efficiency of the team handling, multiple stuff and things like that. At the same time, we definitely want, our cost, the total cost of ownership to go down as well, right? Now, can we achieve with the traditional way of, how we are organized today? We cannot. And that's why we talk about DevOps, and let's understand that part. Let's go to the next one. So, typically in product-based companies, you have these type of, different types of roles. You have roles like, you have testers, you have QA, you have programmers, right? Programmers means you're a dev engineer. You're working on developing a particular project or an application. Or your role could be a QA engineer or a tester, right? So basically, you ensure that whatever code that you ship is of really high quality. And of course, the QA and tester is pretty much the same role. But the final one is the operations. Operations role or DevOps role is to ensure that our application is up and running all the time and it's stable. Now, if, say, as a DevOps, if you say that, my application is up and running all the time, is that a feature in today's world? Can we say that, say Facebook.com is up and running all the time, and can Facebook say that that's the feature of, our application? What do you guys think? Okay. There is a comment that performance monitoring is mostly the responsibility of the support engineers in an SDLC approach. Yeah, that's right. You definitely want to understand, how your application is performing. And that's the role of the support engineers. I do not call DevOps engineers as support engineers because in my view, if you call it as support, your role starts basically, you are more into reactive mode. You basically wait for problem to happen and then you react to the problem. So DevOps, in my view, it's more of an engineering function than a support function. Okay, so let's talk about what are the three different roles primarily. So as I said, in SDLC process, you have dev engineers to basically work on the product, make some new application, modify existing applications, and so on. As a QA, you make sure that the application is well tested, and then before it goes to production for the consumption for the end user. And then as an operations or DevOps, you ensure that your application is stable and is performing really well all the time. So as I mentioned, availability or the performance is more of an hygiene factor today than if someone says that that's a feature, because if your application is up and running, that's pretty much expected in today's world. Okay, moving on to the next one. So here are the current issues that we talk about. Right? If you do not have, again, DevOps mindset in your organization, this is what happens, right? As a developer, you make changes to your existing application or you develop a new application. When it goes to operations for deployment of the production, for operations or for DevOps, we feel that change is the enemy because, if you make the change, there are chances that, something may break. Now, can we afford to, run the business without making any change? We cannot, right? So, that's when DevOps come into picture that, we need to have the reliable process. But let's first understand what kind of problem that we face if we do not have a DevOps mindset. Okay. Now, what happens, again, if you do not have a DevOps mindset, it's basically a siloed environment where whatever changes developers are making, QA has no visibility or has very less visibility. At the same time, Ops has probably no visibility at all. And now if you have that kind of scenario, there are chances that whatever change that you make in application, it may fail in production. And then once it fails in productions, then the only option that you have is you have to roll back the change. Now, while doing all of this, you actually waste a lot of time, right? So you again roll back the change, you again push the change, there are chances that it may fail. So that way you waste a lot of time. Again, in today's world, you cannot afford to do that. Now, here are some statistics which says that 30% of the projects are delivered late. As a result, project cost goes up. Why late? Because if you have this back and forth kind of practice where something fails, then you roll back and so on, then you actually waste a lot of time. And as a result, your project cost will definitely go up because it's talking about resource, resource time, resource bandwidth and all that everything sometimes gets wasted. Now, 50% of all new enhancements are rolled back, right? And these are some statistics that I'm sharing. And why? Because due to quality issues. Again, why? Because if you do not have DevOps practice, QA may not have enough visibility into what kind of changes that we are making, and that can again cause an issue, and then eventually we may have to roll back the changes. 40% of the delay is caused by infrastructure issues. And infrastructure issues could be, as a developer, you may not have enough non-prod or pre-prod environments available to test your application or run your application so that you can test all the situations before you go to production. Traditional SDLC process doesn't help. That's what we have been talking about, that we need to bring DevOps mindset, but let's understand, how traditional, SDLC process can actually becomes really expensive in today's world. Application development is slow. Hence, in case of failure, the development cycle becomes very large. That's what we talked about in previous slide, that if there is a failure, the only option typically that you have is you roll back the change. Again, you make the change and then you push it to production. Again, there are chances that it can fail again. So the application development or releasing the code to production, it takes a lot of time. It's way too expensive. Moreover, if failure happens, the project cost becomes very high. I mean, that's what we talked about in previous slide as well, that the cost goes high because you lose a lot of time. Moving on to next one, which talks about how DevOps can be helpful, how DevOps can actually reduce some of these and can become more of a a quick thing, or can enable releasing the product really quickly. So it helps reduce the number of project rollbacks, what we talked about. It also helps becoming infrastructure deployment becomes really easy, because you have really good visibility into what's coming up. You actually plan for your infrastructure accordingly, and at the same time, if you have to say need to have some kind of elasticity within your setup, you can do that. There is a question that will you be sharing the presentation after the webinar? So Krishna, can you send an email to support@edureka.in, and I'm assuming they should be able to share this presentation, but send an email to support@edureka.in. So Sayuj, you have a question, but I'm not very clear about that with operations in a DevOps model. Can you clarify your question once again? And guys, if you have any questions, just type in, and whenever time permits, I will answer your questions. Also, the third benefit that we have as a DevOps is we have shorter development lifecycle, which enables easy rollbacks. So that means instead of releasing the product, say every 2 months, 3 months, and so on, and that way your application could be really monolith, really a big application. Instead, what you can do, you can reduce your development or deployment cycle. And so if something fails, it is just a portion of a big service maybe, and that you can roll back, and then you can try again. Okay. Now, if you try to understand, what we have in the picture on this particular slide, it talks about that in today's world, we need to have agile development mindset. We need to have agile methods, and a lot of companies are adopting to that. So again, if you try to understand this picture, what it says is the entire development organization works on a common business goal. So as a business goal, as a customer, your customers do not care if something fails. They do not care whether this is a developer problem or QA problem or say DevOps problem. The only thing that they care about is my application, I'm trying to access the application, but it is not working for me. So we all work towards a common business problem or common business goal as a developer, as a QA person, or as a DevOps. So DevOps basically bridges the gap between the agile software development and the operations or typical IT operations world. Let's move on to the next one. Now, advantages of DevOps. It actually compares the conventional way of having ops or the IT operations or SDLC, and the new way of handling DevOps, right? So batch size, right? What we talked about is that the size of your application. If you have a typical SDLC process or typical software development process, the batch size is really big, and the release cycle is not very frequent. So you release your product every, say, 3 months, 6 months, and so on. But if you have a DevOps model, then your batch size could be really micro. That means you can quickly make some changes and you can quickly release it to production. If it doesn't work, you can roll back that particular batch only and not the entire application. The organization, it's skill. If you have SDLC or the typical IT kind of setup, it is skill-centric silos. So means what we talked about earlier, that you have a developer, QA, and operations working in kind of siloed environment, and it's a typical skill that they work on. As a developer, I just develop the code. I have absolutely no idea about how QA and ops work, and similarly for QA and operations as well. In case of DevOps mindset, you have a dedicated cells, in the sense everyone understands what is the business goal and then how I am contributing to that particular, to achieve that particular business goal. Scheduling, so in case of SDLC, it's centralized. There could be a single point of failure. In case of DevOps, it's a decentralized. So that means, all the, the decision-making process, making any changes, it's kind of decentralized and can be done in a very easy way. When it comes to release, in case of SDLC, it's a high risk because, as I mentioned earlier, the changes are huge and there are chances that something can fail and you typically end up roll backing the particular change that you have done. Now, in case of DevOps, it's a non-event, in the sense it's more of a predictable change or the predictable release that you do. So if something fails, you know that why it has failed, and there could be a situation that you can quickly fix it in production instead of rolling it back. There are some questions that I will answer. Let me complete this particular slide. Information is disseminated. In case of DevOps, it's like actionable information. Any information that you get, it's that I have to take some action. The culture is, in case of SDLC, you plan and you plan for things and then you plan in such a way that you always feel that we cannot fail. If you fail, that will be a big problem. So that's what it says, that do not fail. Do not even think about that it will fail. But in case of DevOps, you fail early, in the sense even if it fails, that's fine. That you can easily roll back or you can make some changes quickly, and that may not have a very, very bigger negative impact. Talking about some of the measures, so metric, in case of typical SDLC, it's the cost and capacity. But in case of the DevOps mindset, it's a cost, capacity, and workflow, or basically time, which is again very important. Definition of done. So in case of SDLC, as I said, it's a more of a siloed environment. So everyone thinks that once my responsibility is done, then I am done. I do not care how. So if I'm a developer, I do not care how my application is being QA'd by QA team or how my application is being deployed to production. I did my job where I developed the code and that's it. I do not want to know anything else. But if you have DevOps mindset, everyone is like, if you read this particular statement, it says it's ready to deploy. And that means everyone in the team, no matter whether you're a developer or QA or operations, you say that and you have a confidence. It's ready to deploy means you're saying with the confidence that yes, we have full confidence that it will work. And at the same time, the culture, what we talked about, that you even know that if it fails, I know that I can quickly maybe fix it or maybe roll back, and that will not have any impact overall. Okay, let me take some of the questions that was posted. So does DevOps have a different separate team, or the operations prod support performs the DevOps? So DevOps, I think there is a slide which covers the skill set, but DevOps means, the DevOps or the prod ops, on-call, all those things that you talk about, everything combined together becomes DevOps. And so DevOps has skill set like you're a network admin, you're a system admin, you're a web admin. All these things combined together becomes DevOps. Again, within DevOps, you have different roles to play. But again, for example, automation. Like everyone may not be knowing automation within DevOps team, but you have that as part of the team's responsibility, right? So DevOps is a combination of so many things, including on-call support and all that. But overall idea of, so DevOps, it's not a function in my mind, it's more of a culture. That the cultural change that we need to do. As a ops team or a sysadmin team, there are, of course, some change in the responsibility and more of, again, the mindset change, but the core function remains same. That I have enough understanding about this operating system, I have enough understanding about the application, and so on. Again, on the infrastructure side, you might have heard a lot that we are moving towards cloud computing, which is like moving into AWS and things like that. Another question. So, okay, so the same thing is done with Agile. So Sanjay has a question, what is the difference? Now, Agile is kind of similar thing. Like if you have Agile mindset in your company, typically Dev, QA, and Ops, you sit together. So, and then you work on a problem. Now, everyone has their own responsibility. As a Dev, you develop the product. As QA, you test the application. As Ops, you deploy the application, make sure that your application is up and running. But Agile is, again, a new method of bringing more of a DevOps culture in your organization. A lot of questions are coming in. Do we need to know coding and all in order to be DevOps? Again, I think there is a slide which talks about the skill set, but yes, you don't need to know coding. I mean, you don't need to actually write, say, Java programs, but you need to understand the application or the coding enough. Like if something fails, you should be able to troubleshoot and figure out that, hey, this particular application failed because this particular application is behaving weird. And not like, I do not know what is happening with the application and let me reach out to a developer. So you're not expected to know the development end to end, but it is better to know how application development happens, how developers write their code, and what is the flow of the application, and so on. What are the types of DevOps? As you said, automation. What are the others? So automation is a big portion in today's world. Again, and automation, at every level, I would say. Infrastructure automation is one. Application deployment automation is one, which is, of course, you might have heard about CI and CD, which is continuous integration and continuous deployment, or the delivery. That is again an automation. So automation is a big portion of DevOps, but DevOps, as I said, it's more of a mindset change that we need to work together. Dev, QA, and operations is a one larger group with different responsibility than how it used to be earlier. At the same time, we also have to think about how we can quickly, test something. We kind of develop that kind of capability that we could quickly test something, and then in case we have to roll back or fail back, you develop that kind of capability. There is another question that which is better, a sysadmin moving to DevOps or a programmer to DevOps? I would say both. Even I have seen a lot of programmers, and I'm talking about my practical experience, that as a developer, I saw a couple of people moving into DevOps because they wanted to understand end-to-end, and they moved into DevOps role for some time to understand that part. Sysadmin is slowly transitioning into DevOps because if you again try to understand, sysadmin is kind of going away, I would say, because in today's world, if you say move your application to cloud like AWS, you don't need to actually manage your the infrastructure. That is managed by someone else. You don't need to worry about. You just need to pay for the service and you get it. Okay, there are a lot of questions. I may not be able to answer everything. Okay, let's go to the next one. IT benefits with DevOps. So some statistics again, that the faster time of delivery, improved application, reduced IT cost, and so on. So these are some of the statistics based on some data available after adopting DevOps model. Again, more innovation. Typically, Ops has been kind of perceived as like there is hardly any room for innovation, but with DevOps you can actually innovate a lot of things. You can do a lot of things in new way, and of course you have big, better ability and of course greater value for the business. There is a question, do we need to know Linux skills? Yes, of course. Linux is, kind of dominated, compared to all the other OS, but, you of course need to know Unix, other operating system like Windows as well. Another question, I'm a QA, what are the opportunities in DevOps? So again, as a QA, I think you understand the software development lifecycle. You can definitely enter into DevOps, and I have also seen at least few QA engineers moving into DevOps role just because they had so much interest to know, how DevOps function, and they were successful. Moving on to the next one. So here are the business benefits with DevOps. So increased, again, some statistics that, how it can benefit if you have a DevOps mindset. DevOps is, adoption is definitely rising across, different companies. About 25% of global 2000 companies are expected to adopt DevOps by 2016. By the way, just a little bit of history. So DevOps terminology started around 2009, just about 7 years back, when Apple and few other companies, some of the e-commerce companies like Amazon, Walmart, and all, they started talking about that. In today's world, world is very competitive, so that means we need to have faster delivery. We need to quickly, the moment we decide to make some change, we should be able to do that quickly. So that means the way we are organized today, or the way we, deliver the product today to the market, we need to actually accelerate that so that we can quickly, experiment something and can test whether it is going to work or not. So that's when it started about 6-7 years back. But today, a lot of companies, especially the product-based companies, are moving towards DevOps model. And suddenly there is a surge in demand for DevOps. And as this statistic says that about 25% of global 2000 companies, which is about 500 companies, are expected to adopt DevOps mindset by 2016. And tools to support the work could be a 2.3 billion market by end of 2015. That's again some of the statistics that we have. So again, there is a question that going forward, do you think the sysadmin will be replaced by DevOps? I would say not immediately, but I think that's where the industry is moving, that everyone is moving towards DevOps model, and DevOps may become a kind of redundant little later, because as I said, in two okay. DevOps in demand. So 66% of IT managers have implemented DevOps practices. So another question from Krishna, that is DB and storage also get heat of DevOps. So by the way, guys, if you're thinking that DevOps is an enemy and is trying to replace a lot of these roles, that's not the case. So it's, as I said, it's more of a mindset that today's requirement is we have to make rapid changes. We have to quickly move, really fast, and make quick experiments and all that. And that is why the world is moving towards that. And as I said, going forward, my assumption is companies will not be maybe worrying too much about the infrastructure, because that will be provided by companies like AWS. Now, will everything move towards AWS? I don't think so, because there will be a situation where you have some compliance issue that you cannot move everything to the public cloud. But majority of that, my assumption is, will be moving towards public cloud. So that means if you are a typical, say, Unix system admin, my suggestion would be, let's think about how you can maybe transition to more into DevOps. It's not very difficult. You just have to maybe learn some new techniques, new tools, and then you already know how the overall ops work. So it's not extremely difficult. 79% of those who have not planned to move into a DevOps practice will be doing it by end of 2015, and that's again some statistics that we have. Understanding DevOps. So, I think we talked about that. DevOps is nothing but dev, testing, and operations working together. And having that kind of mindset that, I own the end-to-end is what is DevOps. So it's more of a collaboration, communication, integration of these three different functions within the software development lifecycle. Moving on to the next one. So I think you guys know what we are, I'm talking about here. Way back in October last year, there was, a major e-commerce company in India had the big million-day, sale going on that particular day, and I think yes, Krishna, that's right. I cannot put it publicly here, but you guessed it right. And they had a big outage. Why? Because they probably did not plan for their infrastructure accordingly. They thought that whatever infrastructure that they have, they will be able to survive the amount of traffic that they will be getting on that particular day. And we had a big outage on that day, and then it created a lot of chaos and maybe a lot of revenue loss to the company. So ops function, Hari Krishna, you have a question, so let me go back to the previous one. Sorry. So ops function here is to ensure that ops really understands what kind of changes we are making into the product, and then also enable the deployment or the faster deployment to the production, to the end users. And at the same time, ensure that we have proper monitoring, alerting, everything available so that we can detect the problem really quickly if in case we run into any issue. So that is what is ops function in this particular slide talks about. Let's move forward to the next one. Use case of, again, DevOps. Again, talking about the same example of an e-commerce website. So, again, we had, as I said, they assumed that the server can handle X number of connections per second and so on, but actually that did not happen, and then they had a big outage on that day. Moving on to the next one. Now this slide talks about that if they have to be serviced immediately, then we would need the exact copy of the existing infra, and more importantly, this infra will have to be built in minutes, not hours, else we lose business. So again, talking about the same example, e-commerce website, where they had a big outage. What do you think could be a solution? Do you think that they should have probably waited for the problem to happen and then add some capacity? Adding some capacity, if you have a manual process, if you do not have a DevOps again kind of mindset, it may take multiple weeks to add some capacity, add some servers, storage and all that. But again, you have to, in today's world, you have to think about how you can maybe automate that part. You don't have to probably get someone involved. Have kind of capability built that the moment you see a surge in demand, you add the capacity dynamically and automatically. You don't have to that way depend on someone. And the moment you have a surge, you add the capacity automatically. The moment the request goes down by certain limit or certain threshold, you can even decommission those many hosts. So you need to build that kind of capability in today's world. Again, I think it talks about, the same thing, that how can we quickly scale, what kind of skills are required to scale the infrastructure really quickly, depending upon the demand, and not like I add it blindly, but you have enough visibility, enough trend that say every hour I'm seeing the number of requests going high by 5%. So that means in next few minutes I need to add some capacity. You need to have that kind of proactive thinking that I need to plan things in advance, and maybe automate that if it crosses say a particular threshold. Say if infra utilization is say more than 90%, you add the capacity automatically. Add some few servers, add it into the rotation, add some capacity like storage and all that. SDLC process, again comparing the SDLC and DevOps. I think we did that earlier as well, but let's understand more. So as SDLC, it takes time. If you have DevOps mindset, it will be really quick. The process will be really manual, like what we talked about the e-commerce website example. That if you have to add capacity, it will be manual process, and it may take weeks together. If you have DevOps mindset, Puppet can be, for example, utilized to provision the server, to configure these servers, and it can happen automatically. You don't have to actually manually get involved. And if, say, that e-commerce company had that, the DevOps mindset with all the automation in place, they could have really avoided the downtime that they had in October. So there is a question, Chef, Puppet, or Ansible, which is better? I would say, you pick up any of these. Anything is fine. All of them are good. Chef, again, very popular. If you are in AWS, Chef is like kind of preferred, but all three of them have similar capabilities. So it is up to you, whatever you want to decide. Okay, so career opportunities. Again, if you have DevOps skill set, here are the career opportunities that we are going to talk about. This is again some statistics. There was some survey done, and here are the different types of roles that you have available. In India, I don't think anyone took the survey, but here are some statistics, who took the survey from which country and all that. So DevOps roles that you have, it's about 10.3% of the roles are, architect roles of overall. Majority of them are DevOps engineers. DevOps, as an engineer, you have a lot of demand, in today's world as DevOps engineer. Next one, if you see the systems engineer, again, my assumption is that going forward, the role of the system engineers may go down a bit, and it will get added to, say, DevOps engineering pool, the skill set. So Puppet is available on Windows as well. That's my understanding. I haven't tried it. There's a question from Ravindra that what are the alternatives for Puppet on Windows? So I think it is available for Windows as well. Although, as I said, I haven't tried it, but you can actually check. I think it should be available for Windows as well. Again, Ravindra, to answer your question, you can Google for Puppet tool for Windows or any other operating system, and you can find the details. Nishant, to answer your question, can we have any classroom for trainings for Chef and Puppet? Yes, we do have some of the trainings available, and you can contact Edureka. Send an email to Edureka to support@edureka.in, and they should be able to answer that. Irfan, I missed your question, so if you can type in again, I will answer your question. DevOps, these are different types of jobs and the salary trends. If you see, after January, it has really picked up. And this data that we have available is little dated. Jan 2015, it has gone up like anything. Again, some statistics based on some US numbers. So if you have 10 years or more experience, this is how much you typically get in the US. And this is, as I said, the US data that we have. Are these tools, another question from Mahesh, are these tools all open source? Most of the tools are open source, the Puppet, Chef as well, so you can use it. Chef, I'm not too sure. I think it may be licensed, but Puppet is open source. Going to the next one. Major companies using DevOps. So I don't need to read it. I think you can easily understand. Most of the product-based companies are moving towards DevOps model. Now, some business goals, again, by adopting DevOps, that 63% improvement in business efficiency. Again, some statistics here. Hope we are good here. We're not going to have any demo. Now, DevOps, will it replace the traditional SDLC? And understand why. So what we have been talking about it, and I know guys, you have a lot of questions which I will answer. Give me a couple of more minutes, but feel free to send your questions and I will answer in a couple of minutes. So DevOps has a bright future ahead. Why? Because the SDLC process that we have still with many companies, the typical traditional way of handling operations or the IT function, it's not very fast enough. We all know that it takes a lot of time to make any changes to release a product. So it's not fast, and today's world, it demands for faster delivery, quicker delivery. It's not cost effective. I think we talked about why. It's not efficient. We need to actually fine tune some of the processes, right? And this is what DevOps does. Organizations need high quality, high speed, efficiency, and of course low cost. So now again, for all of this, DevOps is a solution. Dev and Ops work in silos. Again, if you have a SDLC process, that's what we talked about, which is not going to work in current situation. As a DevOps organization or the modern way of working together is we have to work together. We have a common business goal to achieve. We have different roles to play as Dev, QA, and Ops, but we have to work together. What we talked about is that more of an agile mindset or agile methodologies. We have to work as a team with maybe different responsibilities. Agility in Dev and Ops is the need of the hour. That's what we talked about. DevOps automation helps faster. I think someone had a question that, is automation the only way? I would say that automation is the major portion of achieving DevOps, where you try to find an opportunity where you can automate things to make things really fast. The e-commerce website example that I talked about, again, it talks about automation, that if you have an automation in place where you can add capacity automatically or reduce capacity automatically, have kind of elasticity in place, that's the solution for this kind of problem. You also have, with the DevOps mindset, you have shorter software development cycle, deployment or development life cycle, that you don't have to wait for your code to get deployed after 3 months if you have, say, if you have something new idea that you want to implement. If you have, again, DevOps mindset, you can really deploy your application really fast and can validate whether it is going to work or not. I'll give you another example of Facebook, where how they deploy the application today is that the moment they want to make a change, they release the product to their internal users. So all the Facebook employees, they use the product first, and then they release the product to limited set of customers to outside. Once they feel that yes, everything is fine, there are no issues, then they go full-fledged and then deploy the application to everyone. And it doesn't happen in weeks, but it happens in few hours, right? So this is what is needed. I mean, DevOps is the need of the hour. That's what we have been talking about. Okay, so any questions? And I'll pick up the questions that you guys have posted. Give me a few seconds. There are a lot of questions that I need to go through, so please bear with me. Where were we? So how can a programmer enter into the DevOps? We understood DevOps. So as a programmer, as I said, you need to understand how your application runs into production, how your application gets monitored, gets alerted in case there is a failure or problem, right? So basically, if you're a programmer, you want to enter into DevOps, I think that's a right opportunity, because that way you understand the end-to-end function of the software development, right? So Irfan, how can you implement from Agile to DevOps at enterprise level for pilot projects? So from Agile to DevOps, I don't completely agree that it's two different things. Basically, you adopt to a DevOps mindset by making by having the agile methodologies in your organization, and even for pilot projects, that's kind of quickly validating whether it is going to work or not. So that becomes easier if you have DevOps mindset, if you have agile methodology that you follow in your organization. What is the best online source for these tools? So Krishna, you can actually search for some of the DevOps tools. Some of the tools that I would suggest is you have Git for your source control. You have Jenkins for your continuous integration and continuous deployment. So these are some of the tools that you can use. And for infrastructure, as I said, most of the organizations are moving towards AWS. So again, understand how the infrastructure is managed in AWS. As I mentioned, in AWS, if you want to set up some infrastructure, you can do it within few minutes. You don't have to wait for anyone. You have to, of course, pay for the service, but you can set up your infrastructure really quickly and really fast. Okay, some of the other questions. Question from Gaurav. Being an analyst, what prospects do I hold in DevOps environment? So as an analyst, you can actually analyze how the application is being used. More of a understanding the trend, and that way you can suggest some changes. So like if you see the utilization of, say, your application going high, you can then suggest that I analyze this and I see this is the analysis that I have for, say, last 1 month data, and I see that utilization is going up by, say, 2% every week. So that means maybe we need to add capacity. Maybe we need to even see how our application has been developed. And so that way you can add value there. Build and release and DevOps are different? No. So build and release is part of DevOps responsibility. What I talked about, CI and CD, which is continuous integration and continuous deployment, that covers the whole of build and release. And as I said, CI and CD is of course part of DevOps responsibility. Personal adoption, question from Irfan. Personal adoption and mindset, best recommendation on Agile DevOps. I think we talked about that. If you have DevOps mindset, you need to have Agile methodologies, and that's how it works. Mahesh, your question, how much time does it take to learn these tools? It depends. If you have some background already on this, it doesn't become very difficult for you to learn. You can easily learn these tools. If you are, say, from sysadmin background, you have done some automation in the past, it is just that you have to understand these tools and see how it is used in today's world. So it's not very difficult, and you can learn. I would say it will not take more than a couple of months. Next question from Amit. Is tool integration mandatory for achieving DevOps? I think it helps. Tool integration means we're talking about automation here, I'm assuming. It definitely helps. And as I said, for DevOps, the major chunk of the work is, bringing automation in place. So unless you have tool integrated, you cannot achieve automation, or you can achieve maybe up to some extent, but not everything. So all these automation tools that we have, I would say it's not very difficult. It's just that you have to understand the architecture, you have to understand the benefit that it can provide. You can understand how you can implement for your organization. So does Hadoop come under DevOps? No, I don't think so. I'm currently working as release and build engineer. How can I get into DevOps? So Yashwant, I think if you have manual way of releasing and deploying, then I think what you can do is move into more of a CI/CD model where it is continuous integration and continuous deployment, in the sense that you can actually move into that kind of mindset and have a lot of automation in place. So the way CI and CD works is, the moment, say, a developer decides to check in the code, it can actually, using Jenkins, you can, quickly build and release. You can do all the automated tests and everything. You can define the threshold, and you can even roll back to the previous, stage, saying that, this code is not allowed to go to production because I see these many issues. So you can actually adopt CI and CD, as a build and deploy engineer. Next question, is product installation, software installation comes under DevOps? Yes, of course. Product installation, which is nothing but build and release process. Software installation is again infrastructure automation, configuration management. All these come under DevOps. Will I be able to write automation recipe after completion of this course? This was an intro, so of course you will not be able to, but if you attend, say, DevOps training, you will be able to write automation recipes, after completing DevOps course. Next one, question from Nishant. So I need hands-on training for chef, unable to get it from internet. Can you suggest any way? So Edureka provides DevOps training, Nishant, and as I mentioned earlier, you can get in touch with Edureka by sending an email to support@edureka.co, and someone will get in touch with you with the details. And of course we do provide training on DevOps. This is all like it. Okay. So Sameer, you have copy pasted a lot of stuff. I cannot read everything, but yes, these are some of the tools that you need. Of course, you have talked about Jenkins, Nagios, Git. I think I talked about all of these tools, or most of these tools that you need to know, as DevOps. I'm a .NET developer. Question from Nishant. I'm a .NET developer. From where should I start to enter into DevOps? So as a developer, no matter whether you're a .NET or Java developer, I think you understand the application part really well. And as I mentioned earlier, from developer to DevOps, I think it's a great way of thinking that I want to understand the ops part, and that way you can understand the end-to-end software development, from dev to operations. So, but as a .NET developer, I'm assuming that you have skills more on Windows side, so you can learn again Windows skills, and there are a lot of servers again available, and DevOps manages Windows servers as well. So you can enter into DevOps, but again, my recommendation would be you understand the overall DevOps function, different tools that we use. Nishant, another question. I understood chef, but unable to use it. So you have to actually start utilizing it, then only you will understand, Nishant. What do I need to do to focus on if I have to get into DevOps? So again, learn all these tools, learn, understand how you can automate stuff, and that is what DevOps is, and understand the overall software development lifecycle and how DevOps plays a critical role there. Question from Mahbub, is this course available on Edureka? Yes. It's an online course provided by instructor like me and others. So get in touch with Edureka support and they will be able to answer your question. Thanks everyone. It was a really very, very interactive sessions, and I really liked it. I assume that all of you enjoyed the way I did, and thanks again for your time. I really liked it. Thank you.